Welcome to the hiring room for episode number 2 with Kristine Creed. She goes by KC. She's a human resource director at ServiceNow. Kristine talks about her experience in a fast-paced startup, why she loves the environment and what it really takes to keep up without burning out. How she managed the people process during a sale, including communication, trust, and keeping employees focused during times of immense change. Why HR has to understand the broader business context. We get a discussion about that, and how tying people decisions to revenue, risk, and strategy changes the seat you hold at the table. So let's get to it. Thank you so much for joining me today and agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for having.
I have to talk about the story. So, it was interesting. I have LinkedIn fatigue. I don't know about you. You're right now in the market. Say that publicly, correct? So you're in the market now. So by the way, people, we got this great, amazing HR exec in my presence. Please ping her. She's a rock star. Um, I've got LinkedIn fatigue because there's this whole thing going on about, I don't know if you've read this or not, but like don't DM people, everyone's like crabbing about it. I see all this negative stuff. Oh my God. So people out there, audience, I randomly sent Casey an invite. I didn't know her. And I think she came up in my feed, which happened with the algorithm, like, oh, you should be talking to this person. And I just invited her and she accepted graciously. And then we just started kind of chit chatting on the DMs. And then we spoke for her because she's in search and we spoke. And then, of course, in my style, I was like, hey, would you want to come on this podcast? And she's like, yeah. So, you know what? You're going to connect with the people that you should be connecting with. And if everyone gets upset about these DMs, they can just, I don't know, just ignore it. Okay. So first off, I wanted to ask you, what's really interesting that we chatted about early on was you really have come from like a really interesting environment. You've come from a real startup. I don't even know what employee number were you, by the way?
Oh, I was pretty far along. I was probably number like 70 or 80. So
Okay.
not super early stage.
I spoke to the person that worked for you. Why is her name? What's her name?
Now, yep,
I'm sorry, Natalie. I have a short memory today. Natalie, by the way, she was early on.
he was. And she was
I think,
holding down HR for a very long time.
yeah, I think she said like she was employee number 7 or something.
That could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was, I
Yeah.
mean, she knows everything.
Yeah. Yeah. She was lovely. So I had a really nice chat with her today. But what's interesting is that she said the same thing. I said to her, when Casey and I spoke, she said there was something magical at Logic. And she agreed. She's like, yeah, there's just something magical about it. So tell me about your experience at the startup. Like, just riff here. Tell me what's special about it, or yeah, because there's a lot of people that are very attracted to startups, but as you and I both know, it takes a certain type of person to thrive in one.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at a networking event earlier this week and I was talking to a gentleman who is also in transition. He's a little earlier in his career, but he worked for a
Okay.
company. He was HR, and he was employee like number 2 or 3, and so he went from doing everything to taking little bits and pieces apart and giving them to other people and so on, and 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 that's really what makes a person who's really good in the startup space good is that they are willing to do well beyond what the job description asks for. So I like to think of early stage, high growth organizations job descriptions as like parameters, not, ill-defined career pathing information. You have to be willing to get a little messy, because we don't know where things stop and start. You have to be willing to maybe take and run with something a little bit longer than you would typically be okay with. And you have to be really okay being curious and saying, I don't know, but I'm going to go figure it out.
Right.
So collaboration is a really, really important part of that skill set. So how do I bring all the right people to the conversation? And then I also think being able to communicate what you need and how you need it very, very clearly. But specifically about Logic, I don't know if it was the water, if it was,
The
it
founders
might have
put
been,
something in there, huh?
I mean,
Bit of
lots of
bottled
Miller Lite
dopamine.
for sure.
Bottled dopamine. Wouldn't that be nice to get like bottled dopamine?
Yeah, they hired great people that were willing to go to the nth degree to for their customers, but also for their people internally. And I think a lot of it was our values, and I really resonated with a lot of them because our values actually spelled out logic, so that was easy to
Yeah,
remember.
that's
But it was
nice. Yeah.
lead with innovation, optimize 1%, give first, invest in each other, and keep customers first.
Okay, I like it. So they
Yeah,
walk the
and
talk. They have their, because a lot of people have their slogans and then they don't, it doesn't really matter. So let me ask you this. You said they hired well, there was all this energy. What did they do different on the hiring? Did you see a pattern or was there a methodology that you saw?
thing about being early stage, and this is everywhere, is that you hire people that you know.
Proof.
You know, you're able to hire the people that you've worked with before, and you can put your stamp and say, "This is a good quality person." But at some point when you are maybe a little further from the beginning, um, you have to start talking to people that you don't know or that you are getting referrals from or, other people that may be outside of your kind of one circle.
Right.
And that's really where you have to test your talent development and talent management, skill sets because interviewing becomes really, really important to make sure you got that fit. And I think what we did really, really well is that our leaders, particularly our founders, were pretty involved throughout a lot of the hiring processes. So
Okay.
they were able to kind of keep a keep a core of what was true and valuable to them. And the work that we did was so collaborative anyway. Every team worked with someone else on another team. You had to work and be effective. That it You really heard voices from all parts of the organization when we were considering certain roles.
Okay. So did you guys get a profile of people that were from startups or smaller organizations or was there any? Because a lot of times with small organizations, they'll say it's not there's some truth to it. You take someone from a large organization, right? Say a Walgreens Corp, and I've seen this happen. I've seen people to your vet at a Walgreens and then put them in a startup, and they fail because there's no structure, right? I mean, there's no structure, there's no hierarchy. It's a free for all. There's ambiguity. They can't delegate, or you know the drill. But but so it's a crapshoot. I think it's either take someone from a small environment into a larger one, but I think it's harder to take a big not and again, that's a generalization, right? Because it depends on the person, but it's not easy to vet in an interview. Like you just hey, is there anything that you guys did? I'm always trying to find the secret sauce. Is there anything that you guys did, or was there some luck involved, do you think? Or they just the
I
other
think there's a
yeah. You know what? It's like, do you know that it's like a 50-50 chance to get the right hire? It's like I was talking to an old friend of mine she's been in HR for 50 years. And she was like, there's a 50% marriage failure rate. What what do you think you're gonna get in a hiring rate, right? Like
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're dating, you're married, right? And we're trying to figure this out in a couple of hours and you can't test behaviors really. I mean, you can to some extent, but you really have to have a really tight process in place so you're comparing apples and apples in the process, you know?
Yeah, and I think you can't be so rigorous in these earlier stage organizations because there's magic in, like not so much like the background of a person, but the profile of the person, what they bring to the what they bring to the table, how they do it, not necessarily what they do.
Yeah.
And I think if you focus on those behaviors of like, how did you get this done? Or how did you go above and beyond? Or how did you go beyond the scope of your role? It's those types of questions that you start to realize that they can do bigger than what is expected of them to accomplish the goal. That's the challenge I think sometimes when folks come from a large organization, and I've seen this happen where they're used to the structure and they're used to there being a resource, or someone else. When, you come to an early stage company, there's no resources. It's you and Google a lot of times trying to figure this out. So you have to rely on your network.
And Google. Yeah, right. You're like, "I don't know how to do this, but maybe I can figure this out." Yeah,
Exactly. And you get
that's
it,
funny.
you
Yeah,
get it right, but I think it's the dialogue between the saying, "I don't know, but let's figure this out," and pulling in and knowing how to pull in the right resources to help you
yeah.
get to that answer.
And it's being resourceful. You need to have very resourceful. So what is it that you like about? Because 'cause you've been in I'm looking at you've been in bigger organizations, right? A lot bigger
Yeah.
organizations.
Mhm.
Was it
Yeah, I kind of danced between smaller organizations and bigger organizations, probably with a lot of intentionality.
okay. And what was your game plan with that? What was the intention? Tell me your intentionality.
Really like the smaller, earlier stage organizations because there's nothing to break. You are you
Okay.
can build, whether or not you're starting something new or you have to scale something that you've already put in place. Like we implemented just a hiring rubric, if you will, in places I've worked, or just an approval process to make it a little easier to get headcount approved over course of time. Where when you're at a larger or bigger organization, you can't break things without getting a lot of there's too many people that need to be buying into a change in order for that change to be made. So your ability to move fast goes away
Yeah.
much quicker as you scale. And I like going to these large organizations, particularly the ones I had been at, because with these large organizations, they can make commitments to taking care of their people in ways that earlier stage companies can't. And,
In what way?
different wellness programs, they have different
Okay.
benefit
The
programs.
benefits, yeah.
Yeah, they'll have company matches, have
Yeah,
career development ladders. They'll have
yeah,
resources for you to develop your skill sets. And then I like going back into the smaller organizations and then testing those things that I've learned or information that I've acquired at those large organizations and now trying to apply it in a smaller stage.
yeah,
So I've been intentional for probably the last 10 years or so that when I take these moments to these larger organizations, that my intention is to go in with a learner's mindset and then go back to try to apply it somewhere else.
yeah. They really had an interesting journey because they were acquired very quickly. I
Yes.
mean, they what were the number? They doubled employees in a year and a half. Didn't they from start to finish, was it maybe 3, 4 years?
Yes. We had just celebrated Logic's 4-year
Which
anniversary.
is not normal. I mean,
No, this was a rocket ship. I mean, and they knew they were building something special when we got started, and I was just very fortunate to be a part of the end of the story there. But the leaders who were part of this organization had done this before and
right,
had
okay.
a lot of success selling a very similar product to other organizations in their past. So they
They kinda
knew
did
what
it
they were.
again.
Yeah,
They
and
kinda did
uh,
it again.
and they were able to do it much faster this time too.
Wow. So were they, did they were they in a non-compete? They waited to expire and then launch a similar product? It's usually
Probably.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
usually
a
they
little
probably had a
time to.
yeah, they're like, "Let's just do it again." I mean, gosh, I think about all of us out here, me included, just trying to figure it out, trying to figure business out, trying to get business, and then for some reason, there's just I don't know. What specifically did they do? Or what was different about Logic from a business standpoint?
The one thing I do really appreciate is that with these past other organizations that they created, they learned a lot along the way. They sometimes the best way to learn is what not to do,
Sure.
or those moments or feelings when something's going in a way that you don't want to
Mhm.
feel again.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easy then to set clear expectations or to say that I've been down this road. I know what this is going to look like if I do it this way. I also think magic is very much luck is also very important in this situation too. But there was
Successful
a very.
people will tell you that. Success people will tell you there's definitely an element of luck that plays into timing and luck that will play into some of these situations.
But
No?
not without the hard work and
There's
the
always hard
dedication.
work. Yeah, there's always hard work, right? I mean, you can't do it without it, you know?
That's right.
Now, were they funded or did they bootstrap?
We were funded.
Okay. So you had
It was.
resources to grow quickly, which is huge. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the goal was, again, one of those learnings that you have is not to spend the money that you have, or not to spend it all,
Yeah, of
and
course.
it's really, really thoughtful, and that's where, when you look back in a year that you doubled your employee headcount, that's it gives you pause to think about how you wanna do that for the next year ahead, and if that's the right decision to make moving
Yeah.
forward too.
Yeah. Now, did they put the exact team structure in from the get-go? Meaning, what I see a lot is the CFO comes along later, the CEO comes along later, and when I see that in an organization, I tend to see a slower growth.
Mhm.
Did they put it in the beginning?
Don't hold me to it, but I
Pretty
believe,
quickly?
yes.
Pretty
They
quickly?
they had and realistically, the senior leaders that were there were the original senior leaders as
Well, they
well.
got to bring
So,
the team over.
yeah, the
They were like
band
a
got back.
well-oiled machine. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great recruiting story, right? Because
It's a wonder.
because part of the unease of people, so we like I was talking to a course I'm building and I'm just finishing up the playbook. And part of the playbook talks about the six human needs of people. And one of the drivers is, and they're a paradox to each other, is certainty and variety. So people want certainty, but then they get excited by the variety. And it's kind of like push and pull. Like so you can't usually have one like, they don't usually exist together, right? But in this scenario, if I was recruiting for them, my story would be there's not a lot of risk here. There is certainty. They've done this before. This is like, movie 2. There's not a lot of risk here. And that's a great because a lot of people they want to go to startups, but they're afraid
Yes,
of the risk, right? And rightly so. I mean, a lot of them tank,
that's right.
or they'll entice you with equity that never happens.
Yeah,
And you
they paint a beautiful picture of what can be, and
And you
then they
work
have
like a
to act.
dog and you get burnt out. I mean, I can't tell you the stories on the CFO side of the promise of equity and then grinding it out with lean teams, working 8 hours a week, and then end up with that. Or the valuation, the shares aren't worth what they were, and it goes on and on and on and on. So it's not, this story isn't, you know, it's not that usual, right? I mean, if people understood the amount of startups that never ever do this, right? I wanted to ask you, so you guys love this company and how did they maintain this environment during after the acquisition? You knew it was going to be acquired. So you walked in knowing it was going to get acquired. They were very clear about that, right?
To some degree. I don't know that maybe it was my own, nai you know, being naive, but I don't think I realized that it was gonna happen so quick.
Okay. Maybe they didn't either. Who knows?
Well, that's what catching lightning in the bottle is all about, right?
Yeah,
You find when the opportunity strikes and you realize that
absolutely.
the best
Yeah.
opportunity for us, then, you go ahead and take advantage of it.
How did you protect the people during this transition?
It was
Like,
hard.
yeah.
It was the people were a big part of the conversations. When you are 150 employees, you know everyone by name, and it's easy to say, "This person's skill set is this." What I very much appreciated about the company that we were acquired by was they really had an intentional group of people talking to us about, "Hey, tell us about the culture. Tell us what's important. What are the rituals and what are the pieces of your culture that are important that you wanna preserve, and how do we do that?" A
Okay.
and that was really valuable and also made us feel like we were making a good decision and making us feel like the group of people that were going to evaluate us and make decisions and how we came into the organization were going to take care of us. Um, that was helpful. I think the intentional questions around culture was really important. And then, when we were able to begin to talk about this, because for a long time during a diligence process, it is very, very quiet. There's a very small group of need to know.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's really hard for an HR leader who's used to being out and visible and accessible
Yeah.
to hide in an office all day trying to get certain things done.
Yeah.
Um,
Everyone's like, "What's
and
happening?"
Yeah, like, inevitably,
They
you
pick it
knew
up.
something was happening
Yeah, they pick it up.
because the way people were
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah.
Uh, but once we were able to communicate this, we knew we had a really great story. This is a very exciting, successful moment for the company and for the individuals. We put together we used Confluence internally, so we put in a Confluence page of just information that when we knew what we knew, we would share it. We had an all hands right away and shared the information and told them that we didn't know if we were going to have all the answers or when we would have those answers, but we would bring them to them as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's huge with people. So
It was, and
the communication, they did well on not keeping putting people in the dark is one of the worst things you could do to people.
in the uncertainty, I think too, and there were things that I know, like, this was not a perfect solution, and I could tell you that for anyone who might be watching this who went through it, they might not agree with my sentiment on how
Okay.
this felt, but unfortunately, when you try to be as transparent as possible, sometimes you just can't be because you don't know, or the information you have isn't complete enough to share.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
it doesn't help anyone by sharing incomplete information. So sometimes things got withheld until we had more definitive information.
Mhm.
And that always feels like a problem or that we're holding back something when we really wanted to be able to just share more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those acquisitions are tricky when it comes to confidentiality. I mean, it's and I don't know if people understand it. If people understand that most of the time it's not intentional to keep you in the dark. It's NDAs, it's agreements. I mean, it's a secret until you can share it. Accounting and finance search. So my CFO crowd over the last 25 years, I'm get in the know of how this process works because they tell me. They're in it. They tell me yeah, I mean, it's a really stressful it's a really stressful time for people, right? Because we just talked about this. You just brought it up. One of the six human needs, it's certainty, right? And you're like, hey, whoo, great for the company. Now I have to go find a job.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
reality of it is it was a fun party, but now I've got to go, I got to go rebuild. I didn't get a check for, $50 million, right? I got a couple of weeks of severance and a bonus or whatever. You certainly didn't get enough payout to retire. I mean, maybe if you were in the C, but so you always have to take care of yourself. So what advice would you give somebody going into a startup, like, especially in the support function, right? Whether it's legal or HR or finance,
It's a
what are the
secret sauce.
what's the roadside bombs, that you have to really think about, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to blow it up.
Before I answer that, you made a comment about just the fact that the accounting and finance folks know so much about what's going on. They're involved, and it's one of the harder jobs during
Yeah.
this
Oh
process.
yeah. Oh yeah.
It is
They're in the
it's
heat of it.
and yeah, and there's so much you have to get right.
Yeah.
And that's you don't have a lot of room to get it wrong in general in those roles, but even more so in deals like this. And
Yep.
this is how I knew that there was something special, or one of the ways I knew it was reinforced as us being special was that certain leaders who knew what was going on would check in with me and other folks who were very involved in the process, knowing that we were quote unquote facing our uncertain, our certain death. We were
Yeah.
marching toward not having a job
Right.
and still having to message and still have to get this right and still have to advocate and care and provide the information that we needed to do that, knowing that the end result of this was going to be that we didn't have a job whenever that might have been. And to answer your question about what's the thing in these corporate or support functions is you have access to so much information. You have access to so much knowledge, so much of everything. And it's easy to get emotional about the information that you have.
Yeah.
And the most important thing that you can do in a role like this is have complete context of the business. And I think oftentimes these are the roles that probably understand the business the least, because why does an accountant need to know what we do? But the more you know about the business, the more context you have, the more you understand the impact and how your decisions affect others and how, why certain people get paid this much money that other people,
Yeah.
why did they get a bonus and these people
Yeah,
don't? Or why did they get
that's a tough part being in HR. You see that money side of it, and you're just like, it's hard to stay impartial, especially when you're the employees.
That's right, that's right, and you're the
Like,
one
yeah,
submitting and paying it out, or, you're the one who has to calculate that amount. It's hard to sit with because you're taking care of the business, which means you're taking care of people, sometimes people who are making more money than you.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so you have to have you have to understand that one of the most important things is just to understand the business. And
Yeah.
so you go in, you learn how the functions work, how they interact together. And I think the other part of it is you also have to be a partner to those aspects of the business. Every department is interrelated, and if we don't all work in the same direction, it's chaos.
It's interesting because I always thought, I mean, this has always been my view of resources. It's a very hard job. It's a very tough job. I think that it's a thankless job in a lot of organizations. But it sounds like at Logic, you guys had a seat at the table. And I will tell you, the best organizations that I've ever worked with always have a strong HR leader. And usually they're a strong HR leader because they have a seat at the table and the exec team's listening to them. But you don't always see that, And they sometimes they'll look at it as more compliance, it's more this, but if you have a strong human resource team, it can transform an organization like you've never seen. But you don't see that all the time. And I would say that's just my opinion. It's not as prevalent as I'd like to see it
I
in
agree.
the business out in the corporate world, right? We're not just compliance. It's like this thread that holds everything together. And I think it's a very difficult position to be in because you're dealing with the most unpredictable species in the world, which are human beings. It's super complicated. And you're always this balancing act between taking care of the employees and sometimes
Yeah,
the same direction. Like the story you shared off camera, which we're not going to talk about, that scenario was tough because you're trying to serve the employees, but you had to put the company in a difficult situation with some of this stuff.
yeah,
And you're
yes, and
not always going to be popular.
I'm often not popular.
Often not.
You're never gonna make everybody happy, and that is learned at some point in your career in HR. I think so often, and I did this too when I was early in my career, I thought I wanted to be in HR because I really liked working with people. And somewhere along the way, there's this old adage with people in HR that like part of the reason why you get frustrated in your job is because you're working with people and people are hard and they're complex. And there are so
Yeah.
many other complexities beyond just the actual workplace. And so there's so much in there. And to your point on there's not a lot of folks who are really good at that part of the job. you know, how many times have we all been at parties or wherever when someone says, "What do you do?" And you tell them you work in HR, and then they say, "Oh, I hate my HR person." And they have this one moment in time that their HR person did something wrong,
Oh, yeah.
or maybe they even did something right, but they didn't like the way it was handled. And they have to tell you that to remind you how terrible your function is. And there's enough to reinforce how bad can be.
You know who people hate worse than HR? Our recruiters. They hate recruiters.
Yeah, because you have to give so much bad news.
They just hate it. I mean, when and my story, I'm a CPA, so I was in practice until I was 35 years old. I wasn't just like 1 year at Ernst& and Young and then like I left. I was in it for 12
You were in it.
years. Yeah, I was in it. And you're respected, right? You have your CPA, it's like having a JD. Like it's a super hard test. You're very respected. People come to you for your knowledge. And so when I first transitioned into search, I was like, where's all my respect? What happened? And I still battle this. It's hard to get hard to get new clients because they think you're and look, I'm gonna say this because my colleagues out there is, because there's so many idiots out there that aren't trained correctly. They run a sales organization, they don't run as human organizations, and they don't do right by the people. They do it to get the deal done. You can still get the deal done. You just have to get it done with the right person. It's not that difficult. And, I always hated that about the business, and I didn't know it when I got into it, so I was like, "Why are people hanging up on me? I don't understand this. Excuse me, why did you hang up on me?" I wasn't used to it, and I hate it, and it seems like it's worse. It seems like it's worse, and I don't know. I think there's no way to enter. Everyone thinks they can recruit. No one goes to school for it. Everyone thinks it's easy, and you and I both know, because you have a pretty heavy recruiting background, is that it's not. Not easy, and there's a way to do it, there's a way not to do it, and for some reason, it's lacking, but that's a whole other story. But,
Yeah, that's a whole podcast actually, right? You could have a whole conversation just on that.
oh, yeah, and it's gonna be part of this podcast because I'm on a quest to change this. I this this is the second time I've mentioned this today, so I have to be careful what I say. So I'm gonna say this covertly. I had a conversation with somebody, and they were talking about this person that hung his shingle as a recruiter, but came from, like, an ops background as an executive and decided he was gonna be a recruiter. And so I was like, first off, okay, so he interviewed a lot of people in his position. It is not the same process as recruiting people. And I was first off, I was like, why would anyone go into this after having a successful career, and do you want to go to be recruiting? Maybe because you can make a lot of money, but it's still feast or famine. But he was thinking about his network, which I get. Like, he's very connected, so he's figuring he could, get a lot of clients. And all I could think was, there's another recruiter out there that doesn't know what they're doing. That's all I could think about. So I said, you know what? So and so, he needs to take my course.
There
I
you go.
will save him so much pain and agony. 25 years of honing this methodology, he's gonna learn how to do it correctly because it's not what you think it is. It's
That's
not what
right.
you think it is. And I just don't get it. Why do people think, or some of these, and I'm gonna get booed on this one, some of these leadership coaches, they always default to this coaching on recruiting, and they are having, and I'm like, you've never even done it. Never sat there like you and I have and screened freaking hundreds of people and debriefed and talked to the hiring manager, went through the process, and then struggled with the hiring manager to do it correctly and begged them be prepared. I mean, just the whole dynamics to get through it, to get the process correctly, you know?
Well, and then there's the changing marketplace of
Ugh,
recruiting too. You know,
right.
they're like
It's
it's
yeah,
different.
and then there's no resources internally, and you have one move, and it's just to post a job. And if the right people come in, and you've got no other move, or you don't have the time to really recruit, right? Or you don't have the tools that
Yeah.
are expensive. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And a lot of people aren't trained to do direct recruiting, right? They're not really trained in how to approach it or how to do it. Anyways, I was just like, oh, here we go. We've got a person out there banging around, and they're not trained correctly. Oh, whoopee. So I do have to ask you this. What is your take on AI in the human resource environment, the hiring any kind of the environment? What do you think?
I I think exactly. I think we all have to figure out how to embrace AI. It is part of our future. Believe that AI will replace a lot of roles in the HR function, or I don't want it to, because I think what makes a great HR person is that they understand the business and they understand the people and the dynamics in there. And
Yep.
AI is incredible for so many things, but if you don't have that person who is looking at it across the board, I think you miss out on a lot of opportunity, and you miss out on a lot of things that you could take care of earlier on. So I you could be prevented it when you have someone who's really tied
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
I AI will be part of our jobs. It will enhance our work, but I don't imagine that a job that I want to do in the next couple of years or so will be completely replaced by it.
No. I mean, I think it's interesting when they talk about someone was, I don't know where they were. They were on, I'm sure it was LinkedIn, like, oh, the recruiters are going to be replaced. I'm like, no, there's no, they're not. They're not gonna be replaced at all. I mean, some of
Could
them are.
see for, like, high volume type roles,
Yeah, I mean,
it
and they're using it. I mean, I did some demos on it. I mean, we were just talking to someone today. They're using it in retail, restaurants, like high volume stuff. Amazon's using it, and it's like you get a set of questions and you record yourself on a video and you're answering these questions, right? And then you've got the other ones that actually have a real avatar that's talking to you, that's interviewing you. I did a demo on that, and it's creepy not a real person. The guy on the other end of the phone did not know that it was not a real person. And I said to the founders who were demoing me, I said, "You like in state of Illinois, you have to state that it's not a real person. Like, you have to be like, hi, my name's Emma. I'm not a real person. I am actually an avatar or I'm a bot." And you have to tell that just because the guy did not know. She was that good that you could not tell.
that's impressive in and of itself,
It wasn't
but yeah,
And I think that it can have some play. I'm gonna tell you just in my finance world, there's no way a CFO is ever gonna talk to a bot, ever. I don't know about the ones that are, are in transition or maybe they don't have as many options for whatever reason. Maybe they'll tolerate it, but some of the people that I represent, they'd be like, I mean, they wouldn't even engage in it. They would just hang up and be like, "You're this is how you're representing your company. I wanna be part of this."
I think it's a little generational too, right?
I
The
think it's
aptitude
very generational. I think
yeah,
new graduates would freaking love it.
I do too.
If I
I do
was
too.
recruiting new graduate classes like at Ernst& and Young or at some of the big firms, I would in a heartbeat send video interviews to all those kids because I don't think they'd have a problem with it. They're comfortable with it.
That's right.
They probably
That's
prefer it,
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know? So I think it's an interesting take out here. We're going to try to manufacturing with a client in January. We're going to launch it. And the tool that I chose for now, this is like 150 people, privately held HR woman who just completely drowns in all the union stuff that she's got to do. And you'll 300 resumes coming in and she's like going through all of them, calling all these people. You're only asking things like, can you reliably get to work? Does $20.60 an hour work for you? Did you have 2 years? I mean, there's just not a lot of screening done, but there was 2 options you could do because it's also the tools get expensive for small companies too. Like, it's not that
yeah,
cheap. So I was
yeah.
trying to find something that a small company could use, and one was a video answer like I just talked about, and one was a phone answer, and I said, "Let's go right now. Let's try the phone." I don't know if general labor would want to be videotaped, being they're not used we're used to Zoom and things like that, but that's an acquired taste to figure that out, right? You know what I'm saying? And I said, I don't think we're going to get the response. We can run an A/B test on it, but if we implement this, it's really it's not even an interview. It's like screening questions. I don't
That's
consider it
right.
an interview. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just question if you're qualified or not. That's it. And what's great about it though is you send the link to all 300 people. You don't ever look at a resume, so it's like a self selection. So it's very efficient. And I think it's going to save her about 80% of her time. So then she can free up and try to find other resources to find better candidates than just posting on the job board. Because geographically, you get the same people over and over again. There's nothing you can do about it. You've got to get to they've got to come on site and you only have a radius of commute that's going to work. It's a problem. So
It
now,
is. Yeah. And like, you want AI to fill in the gaps so you can focus on the value additive work. And that's what I'm hearing your solutions are solving is I don't need to do the screening to check to make sure this amount of money is okay for you and that you can come to this office. I want to spend the time to make sure that you can, that you can take direction and that you can we can assess the talent more meaningfully.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's her time needs to be spent.
Absolutely, and even at that level, it's a crapshoot, and then people say, "Well, you shouldn't treat labor people different than you treat executives." Okay, I'm not dehumanizing. That's not what I'm saying to you, but what I'm saying, the structure of the interview is different, and the risk to the company is different. You know, one auditor friend of mine always told me in business, everything begins and ends in risk management, and it's true, right? If you look at management and the decisions you make around it, and you think like that, that's why it's a different interview. It's a different risk. I have a CFO. I have to have a whole different process for that person than I do for my general labor person. Okay, he can't get into my systems. He can't get into payroll. He can't contract on my behalf. He can't put a journal entry into my financials and budget. He can't steal money from me, right? It's a risk thing. And so it's also, a different level of training and environment. But I think there's a place for it. And I've seen in some of the groups, I was telling you that I joined HMA in Oak Brook. There's definitely like pro AI people, absolutely not. And I was like, you have to keep open minded about it because you don't want to get left behind either. You can't go into an interview and say, I would never do it. I would never, like, you can't do that. I think you have to be democratic about it, right? Like, I think that there's a place for it and I'd have to see how we could utilize it. And, I mean, you have to look at it. You wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't look at it.
Was on a web I listened to a webinar yesterday, and it was an HR AI webinar, and I'm pretty sure I heard that, like, there is
I got to get on some of those.
for individuals who use AI, like, a certain percent of the time, I would say, like, use it consistently in their job, their performance is better. Like, that we're finding out that I have no idea, I don't know where this information came from, I
I
can't back
gotcha.
up this,
I gotcha.
but there are studies saying that the people who are using these tools more consistently are performing at a higher standard than folks who are not. And and then you kind of add, I found this article probably about 3, 4 months ago, and it talked about the fact that Gen X is probably the best demographic to take advantage of using AI because they were the last analog generation, right? Where we have been, we know how to use a rotary phone. We know how to use it's plugged into the wall, but we can also use our cell phone. So we've lived in these dual worlds our entire life. And so we've come along far enough that we we know when the data doesn't make sense to us, or that the information that's being, sent back out to us doesn't pass the sniff test, because we know AI is not 100% perfect at this point.
Right.
And so
Is the problem
we
gonna be for the? Because I'm a customer, I'm not a boomer, you're the young Gen X, I'm the old one. But, yeah, you're the younger one, I'm the old one, but I'm not a boomer. See, I'm not a boomer by 1 year, thank God. Jeez, my husband's a boomer, so I tell my kids,
you
"You can't call me
welcome.
a." Yeah, you can't call me a boomer. But that begs to say, to your point, we can discern with that right? Sniff test, what's gonna happen with the younger kids? Are they gonna do they
Well,
have
the worry is, one, so the worry is that a lot of the roles that are being replaced right now are these junior roles, which means when those of us who are ready to move on to other opportunities, I think we're going to see in 5, 10 years a pretty large vacuum of people who aren't ready to take these roles because we haven't flooded the spaces with people who need to learn, right? And I'm not like, I don't know that I could tell you that I learned a ton by keying in data, a data change for somebody who needed to get their comp change or that their
Yeah,
location changed.
yeah,
But I learned a lot of the practice of asking questions through a process like that. And and now you don't have to do that anymore. We don't, we have resources that will just take care of it for them. And and I think we're just going to miss a lot of context. And that's going to be the part that will separate the companies that use it effectively and those that don't.
yeah. I mean, think about this is a simple analogy, but the generation that we grew up and I mean, I know this is a big gap, it's 20 years. So, trust me, I'm not putting you into my age group because you're young and beautiful and I'm old. But people can't even count change anymore. Right? They can't do that. It's weird. And so you're gonna see that thinking process at a different level because they're not gonna know how things were put together to get to the outcome. Do you know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? Am I saying correctly?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, you use a calculator, but you learned how to do it by hand to understand the elements of how to get that outcome. But when you eliminate that first part of it, I do think people could get dumber. I can't spell anymore.
Right.
I
Because
can't
I don't have.
spell. I go to type and I'm like, wrong because it's highlighted in red. I'm like, what's wrong with that? And I can't, and I try to do it without like using the spell check. I try to just do it. And I'm like, how come I can't, how come it's access with two C's, one C, two S? Like, and I'm just like, oh, I've gotten dumber. I can't spell.
But I do wonder, like, we've come so far since we were in grade school, right? So now we spell differently, we write differently.
Yeah.
Like, how many of those things, we're getting rid of the penny. So how
I
many of
know, the
those things,
penny.
like that we hold generation that feels core to who we are, how many of those things are going to matter 5 to 10 years from now too? And that's the part that we don't know. And that's where we have to hedge our bets where, at least knowing how to spell vacuum is important. But, you know, I don't know. Is it two E's, two
VACU.
U's? Like I can never remember.
Can't spell entrepreneur. Every time I'm like, I can't figure out how to spell this stupid word right now. How many times I can't spell it out? I mean, every generation feels this way, right? If you talk to grandmothers or you talk to your parents, and like everybody feels this way, right? That something's lost in every generation. Um, but I do feel that this is like, you know, talk about lightning in a bottle. Like we're on a trajectory that we've never seen before.
And we've said that before,
We've
right?
said this before. Yeah, I
With
just
other
don't
things.
know why. I don't know, like, I don't know why there's a group that just wants to replace people. I don't know. I just feel like I think that the digital world is almost pushing people, the masses, actually to connect more. I think there's a fear, like us talking today, right? Humans have to have other humans to survive. You have to have relationships to survive, not just to survive to feed ourselves and as a community, but emotionally, you need someone. That's why people who are ostracized in a group die. They die because they've been emotionally disconnected from their group, right? If you get down to like tribal, history and things like that. So like we need each other, need connections and to feel to thrive. That's who we are. I feel like there's definitely a group of people who want authenticity. They're starting to network more. They're starting to get in front of people more. They're starting to connect because I think that maybe there's a fear, right? Maybe there's a fear like, I don't really want a robot to be my friend. I mean, if you hear the stories about people having like relationships with their chat, it's that they're like it's affecting their mental state because, well, of course, like chat tells you you're wonderful every day. Renee, great idea. That's a super idea. Good catch there. I like what you said. It's like programmed to tell you how wonderful you are, right? It's just bizarre. And I'm always like, truth prompter, will you please tell me what you really think here? Because I don't need you to tell me I'm great. And they'll go, okay, Renee, you're right. This is wrong. Okay, thank you. But it'll start spitting out things. First, it'll spew things out, but then it'll just start agreeing with everything you say, and people wanna feel that because it's affirmation for yourself, and
Sure.
makes you feel good.
But that's where AI education now has to be
It
introduced
has
too,
to.
because
Oh my gosh.
because
Yeah.
because even just like different prompts will result in different things, even though you and I might be asking the same question. And so to say, "Hey, I want you to call out when you see something that's not right." And those prompts are important, but you have to know how to use that tool effectively to be able to use it
Yeah.
and get the most out of it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the part that feels like the barrier to entry for a lot of people.
Mhm. Yeah. It's super interesting. I mean, part of it is as you age, as you grow, you just have to stay relevant and you have to keep up on these things because you will become irrelevant very quickly. Last question for you. And I know it's already getting late here. Have you been getting questions in interviews about what's your stance on AI? How would you implement it? Anything like that coming up with AI, with like systems or processes?
It's interesting. Um, s- certain applications, like when you apply for the job on their website, there have been some of those questions. And it's interesting. I remember I applied for one job and I said, my hot take in this situation is that you can't have an entire HR department that's managed by AI. I think it's an important aspect, and it was an AI company and I didn't hear back. So probably I gave them the wrong answer. But I'm like, you can't replace the human part of human resources. Not entirely. There's a lot you can do.
I mean,
There's a lot that
think about it from a litigation and a compliance standpoint. Are you going to let AI take care of that solely without some oversight? Are you nuts?
exactly. There needs to be the oversight and there still needs to be
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting stuff. Well, my friend, thank you so much. I really
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you coming on. And so, everybody, this is Kristina Creed, the rock star. She's in the market. Ping her, DM her, find her. If you can't find her, you can find me, and I can find. She's not going to last long. She's already got a full dance card. It sounds like with interviews. The good news. So, anyway, really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. So, I appreciate all your time. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Thanks for joining me in the hiring room. If you like the podcast, please subscribe below and share this episode with someone you think that would benefit from it. We're always looking for good people to interview. So if you have a referral, comment below, or you can email me at renee@mseedinc.com. Thanks. Till next time.